While buying a home is exciting, it can also be terrifying. A lot like online dating, but with a lot more money at stake. You want to find the one, but sometimes your dream home is actually a nightmare wrapped up in fresh paint and likely a scented candle. And that, my friend, is why the home inspection matters so much. It's basically like the Tinder profile fact checker for real estate. So here are 8 inspection findings that could result in huge and incredibly costly repairs and issues down the road. And you will want to stick around to hear all 8 of them because, well, there is a solid chance that if any of them come up on your inspection, you're going to be better off canceling the deal altogether and moving on. And while that obviously doesn't sound too appealing in this very moment, because canceling on what one initially thinks will be their dream home is never fun. But well, isn't it far better to cancel on the dream home than to wake up one morning only to realize that you are living in a nightmare situation?
Sounds terrible.
Real fast, if this is your first time to our channel, hi, I'm Marcie Ellison. I am a local real estate agent here in the lovely Boise, Idaho area. My husband Andy and I relocated from out of state almost 20 years ago now. And well, we absolutely love helping our clients turn friends, many of whom found us just like you right here, right on YouTube. We love helping them do the very same thing, but just missing and avoiding some of the mistakes we made when we moved here and we just didn't know any better. So please take 2 seconds to tap that little subscribe button and jot down our phone number so you have it on hand if and when the time comes and you are ready to take that next step. Okay, so let's dive into today's topic. Deal breaker number 1, major foundation issues. If the inspector mentions cracks big enough to fit a mouse or heaven forbid a cat through, or that the house looks like it's slowly doing the limbo, run. If you find cracks that are horizontal or stair-step cracks, so if you see this, or if your home inspector points it out, that is just a major sign of some foundation issues. Now, the seller might turn around and say, I'm gonna fix it, no worries. But I want you to be very careful with this one. For our clients, if they are even toying with the idea of allowing the seller to fix these kind of issues and move forward with the home purchase, if there are these signs of foundation issues, we are going to be bringing in a structural engineer to evaluate them. That way we can be certain we fully understand just how severe the problem is. But well, just to rip off the Band-Aid with this one, this is likely one that my husband, Andy, and I are most likely going to strongly be encouraging you to just walk away from.
So that's a no, I guess?
But heck, even if they say that they will deal with it, well, I'd still be a bit leery about it. A bad and crumbling foundation means the entire house is essentially trying to return to the earth, and well, we don't want your wallet going with it. Now, on to number 2. Let's talk about the roof. A roof that's sagging, leaking, or older than, well, all get out, it's not a quirk, it's a money pit. Roof replacements can cost tens of thousands of dollars, and until it's fixed, every rainstorm could potentially be an indoor water feature that you didn't ask for. And yep, this is one that we see a lot. And well, yes, sometimes the seller will look at the inspection report and make the wise, but also costly for them, of course, decision to replace the roof. But that is not always the case. And well, if they do not want to do that or offer you a credit at close that will cover the full roof replacement, in which case we would get several quotes for you from various roofers to ensure you know exactly what that cost would be, well, we're going to be walking away. And well, even if you get a killer credit at close to replace the roof, just know that you will very likely be running into issues getting home insurance on a home that has a roof that's nearing the end of its life. And well, that's obviously a problem. Because yes, of course, you 100% want to have homeowners insurance, and even if they initially say they will insure it, but then they come back in a few months to reinspect it and find it to be anything but fully insurable, well, you could potentially be looking at a situation where you lose your home insurance and you can't find any.
That is... yikes.
Deal breaker number 3. Let's talk about electrical problems. Knob and tube wiring, fuses where breakers should be, or electric panels that are outdated to the point that they need to be replaced. If your inspector says the words fire hazard, listen, because unless you've always dreamed of living dangerously and flammably, it's going to likely be a no-go. Now, thankfully, in most cases, sellers understand when something like this comes back in the inspection. They realize that if they want to sell their home to you, or if you walk away and they're going to be selling it to someone else down the road, well, chances are it's going to be called out again in that new buyer's inspection, right? And so usually they will ultimately recognize that they need to address these issues and have them professionally fixed and replaced. But well, sometimes there are situations where the sellers just decide they want to sell it as is and just won't do it. And if that is the case, you are going to want to cancel and walk away. And then in the same category or bucket, if you will, and it goes back to actually something I mentioned a minute ago, let's talk about knob and tube wiring. And I know I will likely get some comments on this saying knob and tube wiring is fine. I have it in my house and it's fine. But well,
Fine. No, not fine. This is not fine.
well, sorry to break it to you, but it isn't fine. And it's a problem, potentially a very big problem. So if that comes up in your inspection, it's most likely gonna be a deal breaker. Number 4, if you have an old or failing HVAC system. Now, if the furnace and the AC is found to be in working order at the time of inspection, well then technically everything is fine. But if it is an older system, you will definitely want to make sure you find out how often it was serviced. Has it been serviced every year? If so, well, then you might be able to squeeze a few more years out of it. But if you see rust on the AC units or even on the furnace, if your home inspector calls it out and says anything along the lines of,
You know, this could be a problem,
or
you may have issues with this in a year or so down the road,
and then the home seller won't provide a credit or renegotiate to make it make sense for you, well, you very well might want to reconsider the deal because, well, these units are very expensive items to replace. Furnaces can run anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000, while AC units usually are in the same ballpark. And then depending on how big of a home you're buying, you might be replacing multiple units all at the same time. Now, depending on the situation, you could ask in your inspection contingency to have the home seller provide a home warranty. So after you buy the home, if those units fail, you'd be covered under the home warranty. So that can provide some peace of mind. And then in the past, we've had clients who we've actually paid to have a home warranty for, and we've done that because they decided they wanted to move forward with a purchase, but we just felt uncomfortable about some of the items that weren't addressed. So as a closing gift, we gave them a home warranty because gosh, at the time, you can never know for certain when those units will need to be replaced. And heaven forbid it happens sooner rather than later down the road, and well, once you've had time to prepare and save for those upcoming replacements. Because yes, of course, this is home ownership, and with home ownership, well, things are going to need to be replaced over time. But what we don't want to have happen is for you to find yourself in that situation sooner than expected and struggling with unexpected costs. And then, well, sometimes we can ask sellers to provide a home warranty, and sometimes they don't like that idea, and they just want to provide a credit at close or figure something else out altogether. But well, just know that it will be something that you will want Andy and I, or whomever it is who you are trusting to have as your agent and representation, ready and just dialed to negotiate for you to get handled and handled correctly and in your favor. On to deal breaker number 5. Let's talk about the plumbing. And there are really 2 big things I want to talk about on this one. I want to talk about the types of pipes used, so polybutylene or PEX or copper, and then also the sewer lines. So first, in regard to the sewer lines, a lot of home inspectors now offer sewer line scopes. So maybe you're wondering, so what exactly is a sewer line scope, Marcie? Well, let me tell you.
And what does that job entail?
Basically, your inspector will go and locate an entry point into the sewer line, which is usually a clean out, so maybe a capped pipe in the yard, basement, garage, or in your crawl space. And then they will insert a camera, which is a long, flexible cable with a high-resolution, waterproof camera on it. And then that is just fed into the line, and then your inspector can see in real time what's happening all along and throughout that line, all the way through the house and out to the street. So what are they looking for? They want to see the condition of the pipe, what's happening underground and outside of the house. And well, why and when is this important? Well, if there are trees nearby and it's a clay pipe, roots can get into that pipe, and then you can find yourself looking at a whole slew of problems. And yep, expensive problems. We have seen this happen a couple of times now where roots were found in the pipes during the sewer scope. And fortunately, in both of those cases, the sellers were great about it, and in both instances, we were able to negotiate with them to make it right for our buyers. In one case, the sellers decided to just go ahead and go in and have it professionally repaired prior to closing. And then in the other situation, they offered a substantial credit at close along with reducing the sales price. So in both of those deals, our buyers were able to still buy the home, but they did so with terms that were fair. If things had gone the other way and the sellers were not willing to work with us to make this work, we would have walked away from the deal entirely. And then the second topic on plumbing I want to talk about with you today is in regard to what type of plumbing is in the house. So what type of pipes. So it's polybutylene, copper, or PEX. And really, just as a super high level takeaway, here's what you need to understand about all three of these. If the home has polybutylene, well, that's just straight out a red flag, because it is not a matter of if it's going to break, but instead when it is going to break. And of course, once it breaks, it's going to need to be replaced, and that can be costly. So yep, if you find that you have polybutylene pipes and it's a home that you really love, well then we are going to be asking to have it replaced prior to closing, or to get you a big credit at close so you are ready with the funds to replace it if and when the time comes. And hey, if you are working with my husband Andy and I, you can trust that this is not going to be something that is going to come as a big surprise to you, because my handy Andy, as people often refer to him as, and everyone in my family calls him, and so many of our clients now call him because he's handy. Andy knows that with homes built between 1978 and 1998-ish, well, there is a solid chance that they are going to have polybutylene plumbing in them. If, well, of course, they haven't already broken and been replaced. And well, Andy is going to be popping his bald head down into that crawl space to see if he can set eyes on the pipes. So we'll typically know what we're going into before even putting in that offer. But in the off chance that we, and who am I kidding, Andy, if he can't get his eyes on those pipes, so in situations where there isn't a water line close by the crawl space opening, well then it could be something that will be called out in the inspection, because for whatever reason, very rarely do listing agents seem to know offhand what type of pipes are in the house that they are listing. Not sure why that seems to be the case, but it just is a trend. So if you are looking at homes that were built in that time frame, so again between 1978 and 1998-ish, just know that polybutylene might be something that we will have to address. And then when it comes to copper and PEX, thankfully both of these are typically good to find. With copper, as long as it is in good condition, it's a durable option. And then with PEX, that's what you'll find in the vast majority of new and or newish homes that are currently being constructed today, which, assuming installation is done properly, is a very solid and durable option.
Strong, durable, reliable.
I like the sound of that.
Okay, so now deal breaker number 6. Let's talk about water intrusion. So our home inspectors today have thermal readers, which basically allow them to just hold up the device against the wall and see if there's any moisture behind the walls. And well, those little tools really are pretty darn cool and, well, very, very useful. So if your home inspector has one, I would absolutely recommend having them use it, because if they find that there is any water intrusion back behind your walls, well...
So that's a no then?
Yep, nope. We're not going to be playing with this one. Finding water and moisture in the walls will almost always lead to weakened wood, drywall, and insulation, and yet future structural issues. Not to mention mold and mildew of all kinds, and just all kinds of issues that you don't want to or need to be dealing with.
Hey, so we are big boys, we must move on.
Okay, so deal breaker number 7, environmental issues. So what am I talking about on this one? I'm talking about asbestos. So like asbestos tile, or sometimes you'll see asbestos around piping, around like an old furnace or something like that. Now, people will argue and say if there's asbestos in the basement, which was big back in the 50s and 60s, back when, well, they were just using a lot of asbestos tile then. Some people will argue and say,
Hey, we just put another floor on top of it. It's fine because we didn't disturb it.
Because, well, once you disturb asbestos and it gets into the air, well, that's where you start running into big problems. And well, a lot of people just don't want to deal with it. It's like, no, I'm not okay with you just slapping on another type of floor on it and saying it's fine. And now calm down if you're in this bucket and you are shooting eye daggers at me right now from wherever you're watching this from. I'm just speaking as a real estate agent and sharing what I have seen, experienced, and know. Asbestos removal is very costly and it takes a lot of time. So yeah, it's a lot to take on. So if the seller isn't willing to take on that and deal with it and remove it properly, well, even if they offer you a credit, eek, nope, I'd encourage you to walk away and find another house.
And we're walking.
And then let's talk about radon. So first, the boring boilerplate description about what radon is. Radon is a colorless, odorless gas that is emitted from the earth underneath the foundation of a home. So if there are a lot of rocks, if you're in an area with just a lot of rocks as the foundation, well, that can emit radon, and that can come through the foundation and into the home. So the home inspector is going to conduct a test by basically putting a canister in the house that sits for 48 hours, and then they'll come back and measure it and get a reading. And if the radon levels are found to be high, well, then you are going to need a mitigation system to get the radon out of the house. And well, if a seller is not willing to do that, well, you will have the option to get your own mitigation system to fix the problem, which will likely run between $2,000 to $3,500. And yeah, that's not terribly, incredibly expensive. But if you're not willing to do that, and that's going to fall on you, well, it could potentially be a deal breaker. It just depends on your budget and comfort. But well, personally, I would not want to be living in a home with elevated radon levels, or have my boys and husband and family and friends who come visit. I wouldn't want any of us exposed to it. So yeah, it's a big deal to me, and I think any seller worth their salt should be willing to make that right for you.
That's my 2 cents on the issue.
Voila.
Oh, thank you, Marcie.
Okay, so deal breaker number 8. Let's talk about DIY disasters or flipped homes. If your inspector keeps saying things like
Not to code,
or
improper installation,
or
did they even own a level?
that's your cue to leave. A home full of weekend warrior fixes is often a ticking time bomb of hidden repairs. Whenever we find ourselves talking about these kind of homes and situations, I always envision my mom saying it's just like lipstick on a pig. And well, my friend, when it comes to transactions as big as buying a house, that's some expensive lipstick.
I spent $1,200 on a makeup artist.
Okay, so while every house is gonna have something called out on the inspection, right? And that's true with brand new construction homes as well as older resale homes, because yes, even with new construction homes, you are 100% gonna want to get your third-party inspection. And yet the inspection will likely come back with things such as maybe a cracked tile, a sticky window, missing grout, or caulking. All of those things can be dealt with. But well, not all issues are created equal, right? And now you know 8 big ones to look out for. And then if you have anything else to add, maybe you had a home inspection in the past that had a finding or result that threw you for a loop. Please take 2 seconds and let us know down in the comment section about your experience. I want to hear about it, and I know other viewers will as well. Because here's the deal, while walking away from a deal is never ever fun, well, I can basically promise you that another house will come along, and one that doesn't require you to sell a kidney to cover some repairs. Last, if this is your first time visiting our channel, please take 2 seconds to hit that little subscribe button so you can see future videos when we post them. And then if you are looking to learn everything there is about living in the Treasure Valley, we have a completely free, no strings attached relocation guide that you can download and peruse through at your leisure. There's a barcode here that you can scan with your phone if you're watching this on a TV, or we will post the link to that in the description of this video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.